get you with Castlevania.
I would desperately want to know because I'm very confused by Castlevania.
So Castlevania just turned 30 years old.
Really?
So 30. We talked about it, or we will have talked about it on 30/2010.
Another timeline jump. Jesus.
Imminently. Mostly revolves around the Belmont clan and their relationship with Dracula, his castle, and those who worship it/him. I'm just going to run you through quickly. But fun to note, the first game in the series is technically the sixth.
Which is what?
Castlevania.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Just the first game is, if you go by the events, is the sixth game in the series. Lament of Innocence is the very first game in the timeline that takes place in 1094 AD. Wow. We don't have electricity, but Lament of Innocence came out in 2003 on PS2.
Whip some candles.
Yeah. Leon Belmont is the first of the noted. Sets up how they first meet. Dracula's once a man named Matthias who defies God, becomes a vampire in order to become more powerful. He's mad his wife died and is all boo-hiss. And here is like one of the few voiced things you could get.
You abandoned humanity? That's right. By becoming a vampire, I obtained eternal life. That was my goal.
So now this betrayal has like now locked Belmont and Dracula with this never-ending back and forth. Well, they will kind of always be tied to each other. He's able to fight them off with the vampire killer, which is a whip that is infused with the soul of his dead wife, which makes it a wife whip. And that leads to Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, is the second game in the timeline.
Is it really?
It takes place in 1476 AD. Came out in 1990 for the NES. Stars Trevor Belmont. Matthias is now called Dracula because over the years he has gained power, gained souls, gained all this crap, killing people left and right. There's a curse on the land. The church has turned to the Belmonts and the vampire killer whip. Trevor meets Sypha Belnades, Grant. I swear it was supposed to be Grant Dynasty, but it was always spelled Dynasty. Grant Dynasty and Alucard.
It's a UPN show.
Yes. Premiered 20 years ago. And Alucard.
Shasta Dynasty?
Shasta Dynasty. And Alucard makes his first appearance in Castlevania 3 as a playable character. They all team up, fight Dracula. He's a giant gargoyle at the end of the game. That leads to Curse of Darkness, which came out in 2005 on the Xbox PS2.
What?
It's a 3D game. It's the next one that released after Lament of Innocence.
Oh my god.
But it's sequentially the third game in the timeline.
Ow! My brain hurts.
We're now in 1479. It's only 3 years after Dracula's Curse.
This is all...
I'm making this intentionally silly.
No, keep going.
But what's great is this is one of the few franchises that the company Konami early on was like, there's a timeline. They're like, here it is. And we have had it with real world years. There's not star dates or in Earth year 14. It's like, no, in the year 1476, whatever. So Curse of Darkness is basically a sequel to Castlevania 3 from 15 years earlier. Stars Hector, who is a devil forge master for Dracula. Basically recruits demons to fight for Dracula.
Makes great Halo levels.
Oh, he's so good. Renounces his evil ways and tries to settle a score with some other bad guy I don't remember. Dracula is sort of resurrected by Death. It's important to note that Death, a.k.a. the Grim Reaper, is constantly a henchman for Dracula. I don't know how that power struggle goes back and forth, but Hector kills Dracula, seemingly removes the curse from humanity, the Dracula's Curse. That was in the Nintendo game from 15 years before. That leads to Castlevania The Adventure in 1576 AD. This was the first Game Boy game. Black and white. A legend says that the legend is established in this game. Once every 100 years, when faith in God is forgotten, Dracula will come back to life.
Oh, get it!
So...
That was a Count Duckula reference thrown in there.
I see. So Dracula comes back to life because everyone forgot their faith in God. But now Christopher Belmont is the one to stop him. And he does. That leads to just a few years later, in 1591, Belmont's Revenge, the other Game Boy game, sequel to Adventure. Christopher's son Soleil Belmont is kidnapped. A rare game where a son is kidnapped, actually. Christopher once again defeats Dracula. The music in this game is insane, by the way. Go listen to our Castlemania Rocktober's on VG Empire. They beat Dracula again. This leads a pretty long period of, well, it's 100 years, because now this curse or whatever that says every 100 years Dracula's going to come back because he's that powerful. This leads to the first game, Castlevania 6 game, which also leads into Simon's Quest. I'm going to summarize both of them together. 1691 and 1698. So in 1691, the first Castlevania takes place. It's been 100 years. Drac is back, I put. And it's up to Simon Belmont to stop him. Here's Simon Belmont, finally, the one you may actually have heard of. He does, but Dracula's death puts a curse on Simon. Years later, Simon's Quest, the second NES game, is a sequel where you assemble Dracula's body parts to resummon him and then burn him and kill him again.
Jesus.
Which should purge it for good. That leads...
And it does.
And it mostly does. Mostly. Except for 50 years later, in Harmony of Dissonance, 2002 Game Boy GBA game, Simon has vanquished the knight, but Just Belmont and his grandson... Just Belmont is his grandson, and a weird...
Belmont?
Just.
No.
A weird castle appears, but it's not really Dracula's castle. It's like a memory of one that another guy who's trying to get power has manifested. But Just Belmont is able to destroy it. That leads to Rondo of Blood in 1993, which is Richter Belmont in 1792 A.D.
That's it. I'm looking up what a rondo is.
Rondo of Blood. A wizard named Shaft brings Dracula back to life. Richter wins. This is a turbo duo / you could say this is Dracula X for Super NES. He beats Dracula, but Shaft is able to slowly take control of Richter's body over time and kind of start corrupting him, which leads to Symphony of the Night in 1997. And this is actually one of the rare times when a sequential sequel happens. Richter vanishes after the end of Symphony of the Night, which stars Alucard, Dracula's son, who has been sleeping for like 300 years or something. He wakes up and is like, what the hell is going on? There's no Belmont. I don't sense a Belmont. Richter's disappeared or been corrupted. So he beats Dracula. Symphony of the Night's great. Everybody knows it at this point. But Richter vanishes, and the Belmont clan kind of goes into hiding, and no one knows where they went. That leads to Order of Ecclesia, the DS game. Belmonts are missing. The Order of Ecclesia steps up to fight Dracula's minions. She does and wins.
The Belmonts is Missing is a terrible CDI game.
Oh, yeah. He's hiding out with Mario and, let's say, Lolo. That leads to... in some instances, this is canonical because it's public domain. The Bram Stoker's Dracula takes place at this point.
What?
Quincy Morris keeps Dracula at bay, and in the novel, that leads to Castlevania Bloodlines, 1917. John Morris, who is a descendant of Quincy Morris, who's in the novel Dracula, they battle Dracula's niece, Elizabeth Bartley, who is trying to summon Dracula again. But it starts pulling in the actual Bram Stoker Morris family stuff to be canonical with Castlevania. That leads to Portrait of Ruin, which is 2006 DS and a great Castlevania game. Takes place in 1944.
I think I completed it 490%.
You gotta get for that 1,000.
I know.
Jonathan Morris, who's the son of John Morris, they really should have picked a different name, and Charlotte Allen team up to stop Bronner, a vampire who's taken over the castle and plans to resurrect Dracula by making haunted paintings or something. That leads to 1944, and then there's not really anything else that happens in there because 1999, it's mentioned but it's never portrayed in a game. Julius Belmont is the one who, seemingly with the help of other people, including the Belnati's clan who you met in Castlevania 3, they trap Dracula in a solar eclipse because they're able to use the castle. They find some magic that can,
a huge trap.
Yeah, they found some magic that will like bond. Even a god could get trapped in this prison of a solar eclipse, so like that has to stop Dracula. So it does, and he's cut off from his power source. So this spirit has to find a new body, and he has to be reborn. And that's all just told to you as the plot points of Aria of Sorrow, which came out in 2003 for the GBA, is set in 2035 AD. Has yet to happen technically. A high school student named Soma Cruz learns he can control monsters and absorb their souls. And on night of a solar eclipse, he wakes up in Dracula's castle, and these people are really pushing and prodding him to like align with him and give into his baser desires, and like really just pushing him to be an awful person. And he's like, I'm not an awful person. I don't understand. But it turns out the spoiler to Aria of Sorrow is that you are the reincarnation of Dracula. What? I know. And at the time, it was like, holy shit, that is such a cool twist, because you're like, well, after playing as Alucard in Symphony of the Night, I'm willing to accept that not every game's going to star a Belmont or someone with a whip. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. But when you're playing as this teenager, you're like, I kind of don't care. And then you find out it's Dracula, and he has to kind of fight that programming. But he does. You fight these cultists who want to like pull this out of him. That leads to Dawn of Sorrow. Takes place in 2036 AD, which was released for the Nintendo DS in 2005. The cult tries to goad the Dracula out of you or find a replacement person that spirit might want to go into once it's agitated enough. You end up fighting a guy who has like almost become a new Dracula vessel, and you beat him, and then that's really it. Then the series concludes in 2036 AD, and there have been basically no Castlevania games in this timeline. This leaves out Circle of the Moon, Legacy of Darkness, Castlevania 64. They're all kind of not really considered part of the story.
And Judgment?
And the fighting game Judgment. This
The
also
duodecim of the Castlevania universe.
What about Konami Crazy Kart Racers?
canonical. Dracula and Pyramid Head totally race each other. And Ninja from Metal Gear, which were
race each other. It'd be a terrifying battle.
I'm also leaving out Lords of Shadow, which was their attempt
At a reboot?
to reboot. It has no connection to the originals at all. It's a completely separate timeline, but it has Simon and Trevor and Alucard all show up. But that's Castlevania. There's so many games.
It was easy to get my head around.
It's sequentially. Like, there really is an order of events that they've bothered to chronicle.
How does Simon end up in 20XX to meet up with Mega Man?
Mega Man and Mother Brain.
And Captain N.
Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Chris reminding you to not only subscribe to the channel, but this conversation came directly from the Laser Time Podcast, which you can find at lasertimepodcast.com or wherever you listen to your podcast every Monday. But while you're here, why not watch some of our other videos? If you'd like to continue hearkening back to Konami's heyday, why not watch our Top 5 Tiny Toons videos? And if you like stupid videos about licensed gaming, be sure to check out our video on the stupid shit Superman does in video games. And if you're still in the mood for more schadenfreude, please check out our humble Adam Sandler Loves Food, a tribute to product placement. Thank you guys so much. And seriously, subscribe.